Hello and welcome, everybody. My name is Hardik. I am a group product manager at Microsoft. I work on Copilot Studio. And my team, along with Eli and Anjli, we focus on making knowledge better for all the agents that you build on Copilot Studio. We are going to talk today about how you can build your agents with the latest innovations we have made in knowledge. We are going to share with you some learning, some best practices, and for the first time, take you through the inner workings of how our RAG works. And later, we'll hear from Nick, who leads the IT at Gilead Sciences. He's the head of IT innovations. And we're going to hear from him how they have built an agent called Genie, which helps their employees be more productive as well as more informed. So let's get this started. Before we go into the exciting demos, I do want to take a few slides to tell you about knowledge. Let's unpack knowledge for a minute. There are a few characteristics that every enterprise would resonate with when we talk about enterprise knowledge. The first is, enterprise knowledge is vast. Every company uses multiple products for various business needs, right? We at Microsoft also use multiple products. And all the knowledge that your employees create are in all these different products. For example, the documents are in SharePoint, your emails are in Exchange, your Teams messages, your conversations happens on Teams, and maybe for IT services, you're using ServiceNow, right? And so your enterprise knowledge, when you think about it, it's spread across these products. The second thing about knowledge is it's complex. Like, even talk about SharePoint. It's not a single knowledge source. SharePoint has entities. It has site pages. It has document libraries. It has lists. Even in document libraries, you can have URLs, files, folders, as well as images, right? So when you think of knowledge, remember that it is complex. Well, the hard truth about knowledge is it doesn't follow a structure. No matter how hard you try to enforce a structure, over time, knowledge does get messy, right? Say for this example, here, the onboarding guide for remote employees is actually misplaced. It should be under that folder. There are duplicates, like there are 2 folders for United Kingdom. And knowledge is not stale. It is constantly updating. So you have multiple versions of a policy. Some is in draft, some is already published, right? And then it begs the question, if knowledge is vast, if knowledge is complex, and it doesn't follow structure, how can one define knowledge? Well, there is no canonical definition of knowledge, but working with multiple organizations, helping them build agents and ship it to production, we have realized, briefly or at a high level, you can say knowledge is a logical collection of one or more entities that serve a specific purpose or an intent, right? So I'm just going to show you what I mean here. When you add knowledge to an agent, here are some best practices. So first is organize, just to make sure you have all your documents organized so that the agent can access it in a meaningful way. Second is clean. This includes removing duplicates, getting rid of stale information. Third is modularize. We have worked with many organizations, and when we ask them, hey, can you show us your knowledge, they typically just point it to a whole SharePoint website. Well, yeah, SharePoint website can have a lot of things, but a better way of adding your knowledge is like this. Like, the first box here is about onboarding and bootcamp. The second is about benefits. The third is about expenses. And the fourth one is to answer questions about when is my next holiday, right? So please do not throw the kitchen sink at your agent, because what we have seen is when knowledge is ambiguous, your agent might hallucinate, or it might just ground it on the wrong data. With that, I'm going to invite Eli, who's going to take us through a process of building an open enrollment advisor agent. And for a fictitious company called 𝗦𝗽𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, this company is building agents to make their employees more informed and more productive. Welcome, Eli.
Thanks, Hardik. Thanks so much. And let me make sure, of course, that the demo machines are actually on and ready to be used. Great. So thanks, Hardik. Now, like a lot of you, I got an email earlier this month that looked something like this. And one thing that I learned when I became an adult is that there are 3 certainties in life: death, taxes, and open enrollment. And if you ask me which one of those I'm the most afraid of, I'm not sure I could give you a straight answer. Now, this is doubly true this year because 3 months ago I had a son, and so my decision impacts not only my health, but his health as well. Now, I promise this isn't just an elaborate excuse to show off baby pictures at the office, or maybe it is, but rather I want to share the gravity that open enrollment carries and why it's tough, not just mentally, but emotionally as well. But generative AI is starting to change that. Choosing a health plan is an exercise in researching, in retrieving, in synthesizing, things that an agent excels at. And that's why many of our customers chose to create agents to guide employees through these tricky and overwhelming decisions. And today, I'm going to show you exactly what one of those agents looks like. Now, I'll show you the agent in just a moment, but first, let me try to remember what plan I had in 2024 to give us a starting point. They always ask that. Now, I remember it was a plan with a low deductible, with vision coverage, and with dental coverage. And I remember my wife saying that she thought Dr. 𝗦𝗃𝗀𝗃, her dentist, would be great with kids. So anytime that we test a query in Copilot Studio, we first need to define what a good response looks like. And we use assertions, just like this. So we assert that the answer must be grounded in this file. It must mention this plan. And it also must give the details of the plan, including the deductible, vision and dental coverage status, and whether Dr. 𝗦𝗃𝗀𝗃 is in network. So let's try it out. So let's start in this agent. And I've already added this, excuse me, we'll actually start in this agent. And I have already added this knowledge source. It's a SharePoint knowledge source, and I'll just quickly show you what it looks like. So you can see there are 18 plans here across years and states. And if we go into one of those, we can see it's a very complex document, right? It contains long tables with the coverage status of different medical events. And it also has a large table of in and out of network providers. So part of the reason that I chose the assertions that I showed you is because these assertions require information that's spread across the document, right? So at the top, we have the overall deductible. To find vision coverage, we have to look in the middle of the document. And to find the specific providers, we have to go all the way to the bottom. And there's my wife's favorite dentist, Dr. 𝗦𝗃𝗀𝗃. So the plans are set up so that for 2024, based on those assertions that I showed you, only Washington Plan 001 is going to meet all of my criteria. So why don't we start by asking a question. Let's see if we can get the agent to remind us what was that health plan that I had before. So I'm just going to put this in. Perfect. So behind the scenes, the agent is looking through all of these different 2024 plans from last year, and you can see that it was able to successfully retrieve this NWC Washington 2024 plan. So that's great. Now, one of the most common questions that I hear is, what about the ability to compare documents, right? Well, California, it's been a pretty good time being in San Francisco. My wife's been talking about maybe moving here. So let's see what happens when we compare this health plan with the California plans. So we could say, can you compare this with California plans, maybe in a table format? So, beautiful. As you can see, the agent successfully compares these full documents, and I'll make this a little wider so the table shows up better. And it notices the difference that appear from the beginning all the way to the end of the document. It even gives me this personalized table, right, remembering what were those aspects that I said were important to me. So, you're probably asking, what did we change to improve our quality and unlock scenarios like this? To answer that, for the first time ever, we're going to pull back the curtain and give you an inside look into our RAG stack. And the clicker isn't working, so I'm just going to go with the old-fashioned way, I suppose. Or perhaps somebody in the back can advance me to the next slide. Beautiful. So to give a quick refresher on what a basic RAG stack looks like, there are 3 basic steps, right? First, the agent takes the user's query and tries to understand what is the user trying to do. Second, the agent sends an API request to the configured knowledge source, asking to retrieve the file snippets that are relevant to the user's query. And then finally, those returned files are fed into the LLM prompt, which generates an answer. We'll see if our clicker is working. Beautiful. So the challenge with all of this is it relies on a single-shot retrieval process. And this means that if you don't retrieve the right files, you're ultimately going to be out of luck, and you're going to be unable to deliver a high-value response. So we know that LLMs are trained on human data. So for retrieval, we looked at how do humans search for information. So if you asked me the same exact query that we asked Copilot, here's what I would do. First, I would look for any files that seem like they might be relevant. I'd take a quick read of the title and the executive summary. I would pick the irrelevant, filter out the irrelevant ones and only focus on what's relevant. If it's a short document, like a couple pages, I might read the whole thing. Or if it's a long document and I can't read the whole thing, I might Control F and look for specific keywords like deductible or vision or dental or Dr. Crentist. Now, if I encounter big tables with lots of structured data, I might do some quick analysis, maybe with a Python or a Ruby script. But most importantly, if I reach the end and I don't have enough information to give a high-confidence answer, I return to step 1 and I start over. Now, it turns out that we can create the same workflow in the RAG stack itself. In the agent world, we think of these boxes on the left that is, as tools that the agent can select. So in the Copilot Studio RAG stack, those 3 basic steps, understanding, search, and summarization, remain the same. However, now, in addition to knowledge, the RAG system also has access to a variety of different tools that Copilot can use to search for files, read entire documents, target key snippets and passages, and write code for data analysis, which you'll hear more about in just a moment from my colleague, Anjli. But once again, by far the most important part of all of this is the fact that we have replaced the single-shot search step with a retrieval loop. And it can iteratively call knowledge and tools until it can deliver a great response. And all of this means better quality that both on the retrieval side as well as for final answers. And so how do we know that this is better quality? Well, we know because Copilot Studio is obsessed with evaluations. Every single day, we run thousands of test cases across many different domains to understand what does our quality look like. And I can tell you that between Build and Ignite, we have seen a 20 percentage point gain in our SharePoint quality benchmarks. That's huge. And a lot of our customers have given us the same feedback that they're seeing those gains in their evaluations as well. So when we started Copilot Studio, we believed customers wanted AI to do everything, from configuring and selecting knowledge to delivering great answers. But as we've learned more about how probabilistic systems behave, we've realized that great answer quality requires that we empower makers with the tools to deterministically control and evaluate our probabilistic systems. So I'd like you to consider one of the most common problems that makers face: stale documents. Keeping organizational docs organized is incredibly challenging, especially given all of the decentralized, unstructured knowledge challenges that Hardik shared earlier. When new documents are uploaded, we can't expect makers to go back and delete every stale document that exists in their entire company. And that's why today I am thrilled to announce metadata filters in Copilot Studio. With this feature, we are giving makers deterministic control over which documents should be retrieved and when. Let me show you how it works. So earlier, I showed you a scenario where we were retrieving documents from last year, 2024. But what happens when we use a knowledge source that contains both 2024 and 2025 documents, and those documents are almost identical? So the only change between 24 and 25 is now Dr. Krentist has swapped from being in-network on plan 1 to being in-network on plan 2. So now the correct answer, as you can see through our assertions, is plan 2, even though it has a slightly higher deductible. So let's see if Copilot can recommend the correct plan for me. So ideally, the LLM should be smart enough to pull all of the most relevant documents. But until then, let's not leave it to chance, right? So let's create a filter here, and let's only look for documents that have been modified. Let's go on or after today. And today's the day that we uploaded these 2025 plans, or yesterday. So you can see as well that we could use, if we wanted to, PowerFX and global variables to change these filters at runtime based on who the end user is. And then there are also a bunch of other attributes that you can use to filter, and we are continuing to add more of those every single week. So we'll save that. We'll start a new test session. And first off, let's see if Dr. Krentist is even in network for the 2025 version of my plan. So for that, let's just ask if he's there. And so now, when we run this search in the activity pane, we'll be able to see exactly which documents it's reviewing. And we can see that before, when it was only looking at 2024 documents, now we have a list of search results that all are from 2025. So it looks like that metadata filter is working. But unfortunately, it looks like my wife's favorite dentist is no longer in network. This is the correct answer, but maybe we can see if we can find a plan that's going to be a little bit better of a fit. So let's ask for a recommendation. I want a plan kind of with all these pieces and one that has Dr. Krentist in it. What is going to be the right plan? All right. And just like we expected, the agent comes back with this Washington Plan 002, where we now know that Dr. Krentist is in network at 𝗦𝗽𝗀𝗀𝗻𝗂. And once again, it goes through all the different elements that I requested and shows me why this is the right plan for me. So metadata filtering isn't the only place that we've given makers more deterministic controls over their knowledge. I wish I had time to show you everything, but I don't, so I'm just going to hit on a couple of highlights. So first, one of the most common requests is the ability to dynamically configure the knowledge connection at runtime. So let's take web for a second, and let's say we're adding 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗏/ENUS. Now, I could add our English website, but that would be hard coding it. What about all of our employees in other countries that also want access to personalized results? Many of our multinational customers have complex websites with localized content, and 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗀𝗃 is no exception. So now you can add variables right into the web URL to customize content for any person or location. And so the way I would do that would just be by adding this variable that I created earlier around language and country, and then I could configure that knowledge source. But we won't do that right now. Instead, let's look at these knowledge sources. So looking at these two, I realized I might have a duplicate. And many times, you want to use knowledge depending on certain conditions, right? And now you can. You can activate different knowledge sources depending on these criteria. So for example, I could go in here and I could select this PowerFX formula. And if I didn't want to use this knowledge source, I could just change it to false. Or of course, I could make it more complex. But since it looks like it's a duplicate, let's just go ahead and deactivate it for now. So last, let's look at one of our top customer requests, which is knowledge instructions. So if we go into this file group with a set of plan documents that we were looking at earlier, how would the agent know which one of these it should pick from? Well, what we can do is we can say, please choose the right file based on, and we'll say global user plan ID. And I'll show you in just a second how we created that. So now, right, let's just, once again, we're in California, so why don't we take this one, and we'll start with our plan ID. So now it's just asking how it can help. So let's just ask a very ambiguous question that it will need to already know kind of what file it's looking for, and that's going to be summarize my plan. So in case you're not familiar with setting variables at runtime, let's just jump into topics. And so this agent uses the onConversationStart system topic, and basically just sets this variable, the language one to ENUS, and then allows the user to say what their plan ID is and use it that way. But this is really just for the demo. You can bring in all sorts of end-user context information here from identity providers like Entra or Power Automate flows. So it's a really rich experience here. And so going back to the response, we can see that the agent did pick the correct plan and summarized it very well. So it picked the correct document even though I asked a totally ambiguous question, and that's the power of end-user context. So earlier, I gave a sneak peek at Code Interpreter as a tool for data analysis. To dive deeper, I'd like to hand it off to Anjli, who drives all of our investments in structured data and complex analysis. Please welcome Anjli to the stage.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Hi, folks. Who's ready to build another agent? All right. I think the PowerPoint is stuck. Or it's not. It was just a little delayed. Maybe it didn't have its coffee. I know I did. I'm caffeinated up. So the next agent that we are going to build is the Policy Insights agent. And this is going to be targeted to an employee at 𝗦𝗽𝗀𝗀𝗃 who's responsible for making policies. So they are going to need deep insights into what the available plans are, what the premiums look like, and what tweaks I can make. So this agent is going to need access to a lot of data. As Hardik had mentioned, data is complex, it's vast, and it's messy. And what sort of data does this agent need access to? It needs access to text data, so text can be Word and Notepad files. It needs access to structured data. Structured data could be tabular data in Excel sheets, in CSV, in backing databases like Dataverse, Fabric, SQL. And it could also be just images. It could be PNG, JPEG files, or it could be images that are embedded in our unstructured and structured data. Take an example of PowerPoint. PowerPoint has text, it has tabular data and images, and our agent needs access to it, be able to reason over it, to be able to provide accurate responses. So, Eli mentioned this slide on the new agentic RAG. One of the newer pieces here as well is the structured data piece and the ability for agents to be able to handle complex analytical queries. We do so by generating like a Python script at runtime and executing it in its own secure container. So what does this enable our agents to do? It enables our agents to answer business-critical queries that require complex data analyses. These could be precise lookups, these could be computations, and visual generations, like charts and graphs. How do agents do it? They do it by analyzing the query that the user has provided. It writes the code, it refines the code, and executes the code at runtime to be able to answer these queries. And the code is available for the maker to see, so that ensures that the code is accurate and we are able to just generate trust between our makers and users. So we're going to take a look at it in action. Here is this Policy Insights agent, and let's take a quick overview. I built this using the natural language to agent. We have used the default model. You can see that the instructions are really elaborate. I didn't have to do any of it. The natural language component took care of curating these very detailed instructions. I also have knowledge, and I have 2 XLSX files in my knowledge for customers and financials that we'll take a look at in a moment. And the most important piece of this agent now is in the settings. If we scroll down to the file processing capabilities in the generative AI section, here you can see Code Interpreter. That is the new capability available to you in preview today. We have ensured that this capability is on, and let's take a look at it in action. So here I've started a new test session, and I'm going to ask the agent a fairly simple question. So what I've asked is, create a bar graph with the distribution of members on all the plans in 2025. Now, what the agent has to do is, as Eli articulated, go through the search to see what file has this data and ensure that it understands that the right file is being passed on to the code tool. The code tool will then generate that Python script to execute. Let's take a look at the data that the agent has access to. So here we have customers' data. This is just synthetically generated data. We have customer IDs, first name, last name, phone numbers, addresses. We have genders for them, what region they are in, whether they're in gold, platinum, silver, or bronze plans, what the monthly premium is, if they're on autopay, the type of plan that they have signed up for, whether it's individual or group, sign-up date, active or canceled, and so on and so forth. Similarly, in the Northwind Financials Excel sheet, as you can see, it's a multi-tab sheet. Here we have 5 years of data broken down by quarter, the average premiums, which is this with the AVG PM nomenclature, what the claim costs are, operating expenses, and we have them by quarter, as well as the plan year totals. So we have some pretty comprehensive data that the agent has to look at. So let's take a look at what the agent comes back with. And here, in the middle of the screen, you can actually look at the code that was generated. So here you have all of the import of the various files that the agent needed to execute this code, what files was passed on, and so on and so forth. And it's curated a bar graph for me. If I open this in a new tab, we can see that the bar graph talks about the bronze, gold, platinum, and silver, and I have a good understanding of what the distribution of members across these various plans are. So now, in the interest of time, I have pre-generated a query here, and I also asked the agent to not only create that bar graph, but to add a line graph in the same visual to show the average monthly premium as well. Because cool, I have a distribution of the members, but what does it mean in terms of my revenue? So the agent has created this bar graph for me that we'll take a look at, and it's also provided me with some insights. And here, it's curated this graph where I see that, hey, bronze is my starter plan with about $250 monthly premium. Obviously, platinum, upwards of $600, $700. That's where, my most lucrative plan, so to speak. And I've curated this nice little graph. Now, remember, this agent had access to the raw data in the Excel files. There were no formulas, no macros, none of that I had to build as the policymaker here. I get all of this data for me, curated by the agent. The agent also provided some insights in here that we'll take a look at. It said that the visual clearly shows the inverse relationship between the plan cost and member enrollment. Bronze and silver are the lower cost options. Platinum is the least popular, but the most expensive one. So we got some pretty good insights here as well. And I'm happy. I'm the maker of this agent. I'm happy. I've tested this up a little bit. What I'll do now is I will publish this with one click to any channel. So I can here publish it to Teams, M365 Copilot, to SharePoint, my own website, And if I wanted to do like a more business to consumer kind of an agent, I could also publish it to Facebook and WhatsApp all through here. So I have published this channel to M365 Copilot, and here I have the policy insights channel, and now I'm this policy maker. I'm in charge of the mergers and acquisitions for 𝗦𝗽𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀. So I'm considering like the acquisition of a file called, of a company called Aurora Health, and I have some questions that I want the agent to analyze about it. So I upload the financials for this specific Aurora Health, and I'm just asking the agent about, hey, what are the average premiums for each plan in Aurora Health? And curate a table and provide insights. Now remember, the agent has access to 𝗦𝗽𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 financials, but not Aurora Health financials. But that still doesn't stop me from utilizing this agent to be able to ask certain queries as well. So the Aurora Health over here is a similar financials file, which it has the same distribution of numbers. But here you can see that the plan names are basic, standard, premium, and elite. So I'm going to click over here. It does seem like the agent did hallucinate. I have it backed up right here. So what I asked the agent was that about the Aurora Health, and it curated a table for me along with the average premiums and provided some insights. Not only can I upload a single file, I can also ask the agent on how do the average premiums across Aurora Health and 𝗦𝗽𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 compare and contrast. Now remember, this is a trick question for the agent, right? Because the plan names don't quite compute. But the agent tried to like put together this plan and set up like the corresponding numbers. It also gave me insight here that, hey, there was no directly matching plan names between the two providers, so each plan is listed, and it curated a CSV file for the comparative analysis as well. So with that, I wanted to talk about how our team ensures that you're getting the highest quality. And by that, for that, we just do evals, and more evals. So we use open source and synthetic data and curate data sets with thousands of queries to be able to handle pretty complex questions, but that are still based in real world by working with customers like yourselves. So for example, we already talked about like how we could have multiple sheets within a file. We also have examples of inconsistent column names, missing column names. Like for example, the demo that we just did had an AVG PM, which is that really premium or something else? And the agent is able to understand what the intent was and what the data suggests. We also have merged columns, merged rows, nested tables, et cetera, as well. That is all part of our data sets to be able to ensure that there is high quality. And finally, we also have unstructured data that has tabular data. So for example, in this visual, we have the table that's broken across multiple pages, even though it's embedded, and the agent is able to read through all of this. We just saw the functionality for code interpreter that's enabled directly at the agent level. But code interpreter is also available in prompts. So if you go into tools and you look at prompts, you can enable code interpreter there as well and generate code and even pin it to ensure that that deterministic code is always what's run. And those prompts can be attached to agents or workflows or can be standalone. So with that, it's my great pleasure to invite Nick Taylor on the stage. He is the head of IT innovations at Gilead and has been working very closely with us for the past year and a half. And they've done some amazing things that I'm sure you're going to really love. So welcome, Nick.
Thank you. Thank you. All righty, let's get started. So I'm Nick from Gilead Sciences. Insert joke here. Excuse me, I'm reading the prompter. So for those less familiar about Gilead, right, We're a leading biotech company. We have over 20,000 employees, plus contractors, maybe 25,000. We're known for advancing life-saving therapies. We have HIV drugs, oncology drugs, other viral infectious disease drugs. So we're not a software company, right? We're not a software company. We are looking for platforms that let us move fast, building without having to build things from scratch. So what we've built without building from scratch is the Gilead Enterprise Navigation and Information Engine, Genie. There are lots of Genie bots out there, but ours is mine, right? So the idea for Genie is nothing crazy. You've already seen it here before. You have this issue, I'm sure. We have multiple enterprise systems that are authoritative, that are the sources of truth, that do different things, and I have to go to ServiceNow, and I have to dig down 15 layers to go do this, and then find my PTO over there. What's the status of my ticket, those kinds of things, right? Well, we've been working, what we wanted is that single point of entry. Again, this is nothing super revolutionary, but the way we did it makes me very, very proud. We had this single connected, intelligent enterprise agent. That's what we wanted. We needed fast answers, consistent results, fewer tickets, and the non-negotiables for something like Gilead in a regulated environment: security, privacy, responsible AI. So we found that really in Copilot Studio very, very early. I started working with it, with just me. Copilot Studio was announced at Ignite 2023, and it's just amazing that we're here, 2025, showing what we built with Copilot Studio. But it really goes to show the collaboration we've had with Microsoft, working really close with us on a vision that was very clear. So this no-code, low-code platform, it's great. It's great. Native in Teams, we're putting it into Microsoft 365 as an agent that you can @mention, and there are a lot of possibilities there. We needed secure connectors. In Genie, we have no PHI, we have no PII, IP, those kinds of things. It's based, the idea is any employee, regardless of their role, they do certain things. Genie should be able to help them with that. We do use Microsoft Graph. It's enhanced with the AI Search and Foundry and governance by design. So here's our architecture. Genie is the orchestrator, orchestrates enterprise sub-agents intended to be owned by their domain. So we want HR to own the data quality of their particular agent, corp ops, so on and so forth. And we have the Genie team building that orchestrator. I have my Microsoft architect over here, Fairmont. Great job on this thing here. We have Microsoft Graph for kind of low-level, what's the company holidays, those kinds of things. But where we need really, really high accuracy, we used Azure AI Search to index these things. Policies, a lot of our intranet where we couldn't be that deterministic. Articles, knowledge bases, we wanted people to trust the data, SOPs. And we use Active Directory, right? Data gateway, we have lots of on-prem things, AWS things, so like our inventory system, tickets and records from SaaS, and again, this is where people can find it. I'm going to show you this because I'm not brave enough to do a demo. That's Microsoft's job, to take that risk and roll that dice. So what I have here are some screenshots from Genie Dev that we're going to be pushing to prod Monday. So can you tell me what has chicken on Monday at Bayside, which is one of our cafes, right? I think we've done some really interesting things here, right? You can get very specific, and it'll look through the menu, it'll find what you have, what has chicken on it, it'll tell you, and then it'll say, hey, would you like me to tell you about, Tuesday's chicken options or the full weekly menu? So asking follow-up questions right here in their intent recognition. We have our feedback, and then my legally mandated disclaimer. It's like that long, but there it is. What are my open tickets? This is custom for ServiceNow. We have these adaptive cards. This thing can open tickets, update tickets, find tickets, close tickets. But just as importantly, when I say open tickets, it's I have a problem. It says, hey, do you want to open this ticket after trying to resolve it? And then it'll take the context from the conversation and put it into that ticket so you don't have to have your user write it again because they're already probably irritated with IT in the first place. This one's really neat too. This was built by a guy, I call him the maestro of Mississauga, Canada. His name's Don. He has asked about his PTO balance up here, right? Went to Workday, gave him that number. Unfortunately, he spent too many days, ice fishing or whatever they do up there. He doesn't have any more, right? So Genie has a more empathetic tone, saying, I'm sorry, you're probably disappointed, but how else can I help you? So we want to have a little bit of empathy there. These here are more examples of queries, but also just showing that we can put it inside of M365 as that declarative agent, say @Genie. What software do I currently have? And it'll go to our on-prem inventory. And then it will, and then you can send it away, right? And then just ask another agent or Copilot, like, I need training for something that I didn't even know I had until I asked. So the one on the left-hand side is really nice too. It knows where you are. It's localized, personalized. So Don is in Canada. It tells him the Canadian holidays. It knows who he is. And then it offers to check your PTO balance because you're asking for holidays. And to kind of wrap this up is the agentic nature of it. So you can ask one query, and we can pull across domains, across intents or based on intents, and orchestrate that. So we have the query about, he wants to book a holiday before Christmas. So it checks Don's balance. It looks up his manager, offers to write him an email. And then we have some personalization stuff. The ice fishing thing. It was like, hey, it's perfect time for that. So yeah, takeaways, scale and scope. We launched it to everybody at Gilead, all contractors, everybody. We have about 6,000 unique visitors or users per month. That's about 25% of what we have. It's primarily IT right now. We're moving to other domains. Reduce the ticket volume. We have about 200 per day that are tickets aren't coming out of them because Genie's answering it. 16% increase in one survey question, which was great over the last year in our user satisfaction employee survey. 16% increase over last year. I can find information at Gilead, and I think we did part of that. Velocity. We're a ragtag bunch of volunteers, right? I had this idea. I found these people who wanted to work on it. We got this thing to pilot in 10 weeks. It was nuts. Governance, distributed ownership, that's the idea. Expansion to HR, finance, ops, policy. We really have built something that is extensible. And with everything they talked about today, I think people are just going to get happier and happier with the results without us having to do Azure AI Search on everything. So with that, I'm going to pass it back over to Hardik. I do appreciate it. Thanks, buddy.
All right, so we saw how we have made improvements in knowledge, how Gilead was able to use some of the latest advancements, and some of the numbers Gilead shared are amazing. Like something that stand out to me was 16% increase in their employee satisfaction. They're able to reduce the resolution time for tickets and 10 days from inception to production. And they are, by the way, also rolling it out to 24,000 employees coming Monday. Here is a portfolio of all the knowledge sources Copilot Studio supports. You can see we have M365, line of business data. You can upload files. You can connect your Azure indexes. You can use the power of Bing. If your data lives outside of Microsoft systems, you can connect it with 3P connectors or MCP connectors, right? A few key takeaways from this session today, guys. So we are committed to delivering the best knowledge quality for agents to build, right? And as you saw, we have introduced Agentic RAG, which is ability for your agents to find information like humans do, giving it the power of all the tools based on the data. One such tool is Code Interpreter. So now your agents can answer analytical questions. And you also saw how we have made it easier for makers to surgically configure the knowledge sources so that your agents can leverage the most accurate, relevant, and up-to-date information. If you haven't seen our talk and sessions on evals, please do take a look at that. They will be recorded. You can find them on the Ignite website because, guys, there is no way of just throwing all your knowledge source. I usually call it a kitchen sink to your agent and expecting the best answers. You have to evaluate, for which we have evals. And with that, I would love to bring everybody on stage. Thank you all for attending our session. That's all from us.